Hello, listener, and welcome to the Wiggly Podcast number 54. Can you believe it? 54, Rach?
No, I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Never thought you'd make it this far.
No. You've done a few cameos recently, haven't you?
I am, yeah. It's a cameo with you today, which is unusual.
And it's nice as well. I must admit, you've got some nice blue eyeliner on as well today.
Thanks, Rich.
Is that for my benefit? Or?
No, it's matching the blue that's on your cast, that's on your arm, on your broken arm.
So
there we are.
Well, I should say to the listeners that we've lost Heather and Phil this week because they've gone across the other side of the pond to look for all things Elvis-like, haven't they?
Uh-huh.
So things are going great guns, and Heather did send us a whole list of stuff to talk about today, but I think what we'll do with that is just, Heather, you've just got to learn to let go sometimes. So anyway, without further ado, we've got lots of things to talk about, so let's crack on.
Righto, go. Well, where's the music, Rich?
Of course, yeah. Heather's not here, so of course she's the one who usually plays the music. What do we do, Rach?
Well, I can give it a go if you like.
Go on, go for it.
Ready?
Yep.
That's it, Rich.
That was absolutely brilliant, Rach. It's inspired. You can tinkle on the ivories like no one I've ever heard before.
Well.
Now, Rach, you've known Heather for a long time, haven't you?
I have, yes. I've known Heather all through my school years.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
So
yeah.
we were like sort of best mates when you were in school?
We weren't best mates as such, but I always knew of Heather. She was a couple of years older than me, so of course the big girls never mixed with the younger girls, you know. They sort of kept themselves to themselves, and so it wasn't actually till you leave school and then realise really you're all about the same age group and that you mingle together and sort of pally up sort of things.
What was she like as a little one then?
Wow. As a little one, I suppose, she was as wacky as what she is now. She had quite strict parents, and so they kept her confined in the house or in the gardens. She wasn't allowed out anywhere. But occasionally she would escape and do naughty things down the village. And
little
then
hairs running off.
Absolutely, yeah. And then have to be fetched by her mother or father and given a good lashing back at the house. And sent to do the washing or something, which they had a ritual of Monday washing and Tuesday baking and things like that in her household.
Yeah. So, God, heaven forbid anybody thinking the country life's easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where did she get this entrepreneurial spirit from, do you think?
Well, it's really, really strange because both her parents are very traditional, old-fashioned folks. And so where it came from, nobody knows, because none of the rest of the family appear to be this wacky.
Yeah. They don't. Her brothers are characters because, of course, they're quite a bit older than Heather, aren't they? So
yes.
I wonder if it was like a thing where she had to prove herself and
I think so.
Stand up to her big brothers and really sort of achieve something in life. Do you think that's what it?
Well, I don't know, because her brothers she got twin brothers that are about 17 years older than Heather, and so maybe she had to fight all her life to work her way up the ladder, to get noticed at the kitchen table. Yeah. So it could have been that, Perhaps they never fed her, and so she had to fight to get to the top all the time.
You could see Heather as like the youngest chick in the nest.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just pushing her way through the bigger siblings to try and get at the meal.
Her main aim throughout her life was to escape home.
Right.
Because when you get to the age where you want to leave home. And so she got to about 16 after leaving school and just wanted to get away. Fortunately, she could move into her brother's house. And so she did, immediately. She was gone. She got out through the gate of the house and she was gone.
She was out.
So once she got out of the house, that was it. She was total independent and then went way off the rails. Art college, wacky hairdos, wacky clothes. She looked like a boy George with the flowing coat, the colours of the works.
Yeah, it's like a shorter version. Though.
Absolutely.
Well, no, because we're in the Wiggly Lounge. I can look across at the wall and there's a lovely photograph of Phil and Heather on their wedding day.
Yes.
And they were a surprisingly attractive couple, weren't they?
They were, actually, yeah.
How things have changed.
There's no marks of cow poo or anything over them.
No, Phil, he wasn't covered in cow cake on that particular day.
No.
But, I think Heather, certainly Heather, she's obviously an attractive woman now, but she was really, really pretty in those days. Did she have a bit of a following? Were there all sorts of men chasing her around Preston on Wye?
Oh, the locals were around, they did their rounds, and Heather was one of them too, so I've no doubt things happened.
You were telling me the other day about Heaven Phil's first date.
Yes, Heather did not know what to wear. So, them days, Laura Ashley was all the rage. So off we popped to Laura Ashley and we buy this beautiful top with this great big broad lace collar to it. And you looked at it and thought, oh my God, oh no. But then she insisted on wearing it because she thought that was what you had to wear out to meet Phil, the new bloke.
Elizabethan Hev.
Absolutely, it was Elizabethan Hev. But she wore it and obviously it did the trick.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Well, they're incredibly happy together now, aren't they? So it must have been good things. I mean, the reason this came up in conversation, because the other day you came and freed me from my shackles of the house and took me for a pub lunch, and it was the same pub that Phil and Hev had gone on their first date to, wasn't it?
Yeah, they thought they didn't want to tell anybody that they were going out on their first date, so they thought they'd get out the way and go over there, over your way, which was out the way. Yeah, but I think they did actually meet up with a local from Preston on Wye there, so the news was immediately spread that Hev and Phil had gone out on a first date.
So that was it. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, good stuff. Well, of course, they're traipsing around North America at the moment with little Monty. And we've had a bit of a feedback from Heather, haven't we? She's enjoying herself, isn't she?
Yeah. She's absolutely having a great time. They're in a part of the country where Martin Luther King was born. Right. Where Coca-Cola comes from.
Right.
But their main aim is to get across to Memphis because Monty is absolutely mad, dead keen on Elvis.
Anything Elvis.
Yeah, so I just hope they don't bring him back dressed in one of those white outfits.
Oh, you know it's going to happen.
No, please.
Oh, good. It's great they've got away and had a bit of an adventure, really. Really interesting for Monty as well. Good experience for him.
Absolutely. He'll love it.
Last week, I listened with real interest about the fact that you were talking about pheasant shooting.
Yep.
It's slightly contentious, isn't it? Difficult subject to broach because we do have a massive feeling in this country that blood sports, i.e. pheasant shooting, fox hunting, coursing with hounds, etc., are a little bit passé, to say the least. It's that sort of... It's a sport that could be avoided. And I was interested in the way that everyone was so enthusiastic, because it's something that you really enjoy, wasn't it, Rach?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, as Phil said last week, it's part of country life, the whole picture.
It is. I mean, it is very much part of country life, and there is a distinction between a small pheasant shoot and a large pheasant shoot. Yeah. I've got mixed feelings about pheasant shooting. Not necessarily because I think it's particularly cruel, because cruel is kind of hard to define anyway. I mean, we can imagine what's cruel, the actions that we take upon each other, but we have a propensity to sort of humanise creatures. So it's very difficult to identify what sort of suffering they're undergoing. I mean, you could say that if you shoot a pheasant out of the sky and it plummets to the earth at 1,000 miles an hour and manages to hit the ground, bounce off the ground, get some sort of consciousness, gets to its feet, runs off, only to be picked up by a rabid spaniel, taken back to the dog owner and have its neck wrung. You could say that was cruel. I mean, and in some respects, you might have a point. However, I would argue that there is little difference between someone going into a massive chicken shed and collecting, harvesting all those hens, putting them into a wagon, taking them off to a factory and stringing them up on a conveyor belt where they're systematically electrocuted, plucked, gutted and wrapped in cellophane to be put on a supermarket shelf. Now, you could say that the endorphins that are going to suppress the pain in those animals aren't going to be different in that pheasant that's suffering or the chicken that's suffering. So what's the difference? Now, really, the difference for me is that the way the land is managed to look after pheasants is far more beneficial to a whole range of wildlife than the land that is subjected to intensive chicken production. That would be my argument. Now, you could think, really, I mean, we do have a situation in this country now where it's a bit of a quasi-feudal Victorian anachronism, really, the way the land is managed. It's exactly the same in Scottish Highlands as it is in English Lowlands, really. We haven't really caught up with the time. Some of the initiatives in the ways, the holistic approaches that Scandinavia, the countryside in Scandinavia is managed, for instance, we haven't really adopted, and we have these Victorian kitsch activities like vermin control, for instance, which might be important, but it's peripheral. And again, I can think about our hedge rows that Phil and I have, which are great, and I wouldn't want to stop those for the world, but hedgerow management is only part of the overall way that we look after our land. So I would argue that on balance, having said all that, having all that big diatribe, as Phil calls it, having said all that, I would argue that pheasant shooting on balance is probably a good thing in the English countryside, because land is maintained in a sensitive way in order to ensure that good, healthy pheasants are raised. And then, of course, you have open rides that sustain all sorts of invertebrate life, butterflies, bees, all sorts of woodcock, for instance. They love open rides. So, in many respects, the way the land is management for shooting game is very important now.
Yeah, I think everything that you said is absolutely right. There has to be a whole picture to it, not just the fact that these people are going out and blasting pheasants out of the sky, if you like. There has to be a whole picture to the scene, before you can judge it.
Absolutely.
And many people haven't got that whole picture. They're just told that people go out and kill pheasants for the fun of it, and it's not that at all.
You're completely right, Rach. I think it's an interesting... Oh, excellent. Ricky's just come into the room with some lovely pasties. Well, I just wanted to have a final word on the whole shooting thing, because it's great. It's a great opportunity for me to gibber on, because Heather's not here to cut me short. So, but one thing that always really interests me is that we seem to have a situation in this country where people have double standards. It's slightly unfortunate. Lots and lots of hypocrisy. And really, if you think about it, because there is, again, my favourite expression, attention to detail. If you think about it, there's a whole wealth of issues here. Who's to say that the person that goes out, big fat cat, Range Rover, parks up, goes and gets some sort of thrill out of shooting a pheasant, poor unfortunate bird out of the sky, has very little regard for that bird, apart from the fact that he enjoys watching it plummet to the ground, is any different to somebody that's just sat in their living room, as in just eaten a chicken bought from a supermarket, that's spent its whole life waddling around on its hocks in its friend's excrement. It really enjoys their chicken dinner, gets up, lets their cat outside. Now, cats, I've got to think about cats, I should say. But that cat will go out, wander around outside, and it'll find something furry and cuddly and possibly ecologically important to kill and torment. Now, the cats, of course, aren't indigenous, so who's to say that the person that has very little regard for its external environment in that respect is any different to the person that goes out and consciously shoots an animal?
Yeah, you're right, Rich. In many ways. You're
not going to disagree with me at all.
Well, yes, you're quite right. You're right in the whole thing. People do have cats. There are lots of cats about, and they do kill a lot of very nice, very important, furry little creatures. What you're saying is right.
It's interesting. I mean, what I would really like is that you listener out there, if you want to engage with me and argue with me, don't think you're going to hurt my feelings or any of our feelings. We might hurt Rachel's feelings.
Yeah.
But if you want to email us, you can email either Richard at wigglywiggles.co.uk or Rachel.
No, Rach.
Rach.
RACH at wigglywiggles.co.uk.
And just let us know what your feelings are. Give us some input. I don't know what you think about shooting, Ricky.
I don't agree with shooting animals, but they want the fur and things like that, and I do not agree with that at all. No. And when people shoot things and have them left and don't eat them, like pheasants and rabbits.
You're definitely in the majority. People would be able to appreciate that if you're a meat eater, then why shouldn't you be able to go out and shoot something and eat it? But of course you shouldn't really. It's morally wrong to go out and shoot something purely for pleasure, really.
You get the other aspect of abroad where they shoot tigers just for the skin, and I think that's dreadful.
Yeah.
I mean, we're meat eaters, so we're going to carry on eating meat, but killing animals just for their skin is dreadful.
We won't go on about this too much longer, but just a thought that crossed my mind when you talked about tigers, right? Likely to be extinct in the next 10 years. It's the human race. We are a bit of a plague on the planet, certainly. Tigers will almost certainly disappear, except for a few that are maintained in captivity. However, what is unfortunate, going back to the cat scenario, now that cat may well have eaten some tuna-based cat food, right? Now we have a situation across the globe where our marine environment is being depleted to an exorbitant extent, but we don't notice it. We don't notice it. We're not told about it on the news very often, and we can't see it, so we don't realise it's going on. Now in that little tin of cat food, there may well be various different types of tuna, including rare species like big-eye tuna, for instance. Now, who's to say those big-eye tuna, which are a most beautiful-looking fish in the flesh, absolutely gorgeous-looking animal, have a really intricate life cycle, who's to say they aren't any more significant or worth less regard than a tiger, for instance? You know, lots of things to think about.
Aren't they? They're important in their environment.
Absolutely, they are, yeah. And the marine environment is a lot more important to animal health in a terrestrial environment than people realise. So.
The whole thing's a big subject.
It's a massive subject. And I think we'll change the subject
and
now.
Meanwhile, your pasties are going.
Yeah, and the reason that the Ricky has come in, it's great today. I'm joined by two blonde beauties today.
Isn't that creepy?
Yeah.
He wants a chocolate cake.
Ricky is. You've done a few cameos on the podcast before, Rick, haven't you? And you are very much Wiggly's culinary queen.
Oh, thank you.
Can you put these pasties, they smell beautiful, can you put these into context? You talked
They're
about
out of the Duchy cookbook, which we've acquired. I'm trying to get the proper Cornish pasty pastry, but it's not quite right. They're made with lamb, and I've substituted Madeira for my husband's red wine.
Right.
Much to his disgust. And I'd just like you to sample them and see what you think.
Let's have a look.
Yeah.
They smell beautiful. They smell beautiful. I'll try and negotiate myself off this couch with my dodgy
There's
button.
2 different...
Thank you, Rick.
Excellent. Cheers. Have you tried a bit, Ricky, yourself?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Is it good?
The chief taster liked them, that's my husband.
Right. Well, he's the important one.
Which
So
one's
here we
this?
go.
Are they both the same?
Yes, they're just slightly different pastry.
Well, I've got to say, if I could get a pasty like that in a Cornish pasty shop, I'll be a happy man.
What's the difference between the pastry that I've got and the pastry that Richard's got?
Well, that's better in yours.
Yeah.
And I tried to make a little bit of a cheaper version by using like a cooking margarine.
All right.
Richard, so you ought to try each other's and see if there's any difference.
Okay, well,
So
I'll
this
eat
one I'm
that,
eating,
please,
it's been the pastries are made with margarine.
Will you try that one then? Because this is the butter one.
What's the traditional ingredient in pasties?
It's meat
Try a bit of
and swede and potato and onion, really. But they've got a secret ingredient which you can't find out, which I'd like to know.
I suppose when pasties were made originally, they were just a way of getting rid of a load of stuff. You know, you get a load of meat and vegetables.
For the miners to take down the mines, weren't they, in Cornwall?
Really?
Because the pastry on the end, they could just hold and throw away then, because their hands were always dirty.
All right.
And they used to have the pudding in one side and the savoury in the other side.
That's interesting. I never knew that. What's the kind of the main type of mining they do in Cornwall? I know they do slate
Tin mining, I think, was the main mining down there.
Right.
They did a lot of tin mining.
Right. Was there something sort of toxins in the when they used to go down in the mine?
Arsenic was. That's another reason they would have held it by the crust and thrown it away, I would imagine.
Oh, interesting. Well, I much prefer this one that you gave to Richard. The pastry on there is beautiful. So that is the pastry made with the
margarine.
Oh, right.
Yours has got the butter.
Ah, right. Well, I preferred that one.
I prefer mine as well, Rach.
Yeah.
Oh dear, that's interesting then.
Poor Rach.
Yeah. Oh. Do you mean I... Oh. Can we swap, Rich?
No, certainly not.
Oh.
You could just try a little bit more of mine. You go a little bit off the end.
All that blue-eyed and blonde stuff, and then you won't swap your food? Wow.
I've got to say, that's absolutely gorgeous, though. Well done. That was a fine feast. I think this might be this is better, much better than that Tesco cake you handed out sometimes.
Our birthday cakes.
Can we have birthday pasties from now on?
Yeah. Roll them up, Rick.
Excellent. That was beautiful. Cheers, Ricky. Now, I don't think this is the final treat that you've got in store for us today, is it?
Well, we were going to make nettle tea as well.
Yeah.
How have you got on with that?
Well, not very well, because when I looked at my recipe, you had to dry the nettles, and I haven't dried the nettles, so...
Okay. Well, at that point, then I sort of came in on it and got some nettles, and I put them in the oven to dry them out, because it has actually rained here quite a bit, and so, you know, they are very, very wet. So I dried them off with an ordinary tissue, put them in the oven, and I baked them now to a nice tenderness, which is what the recipe said. And so now they're ready to be infused.
With boiling water.
With their boiling water.
Okay, well, I mean, do you want to go and do that,
Yes,
Ricky?
I can do
Is that all right? I think they're only in the kitchen anyway. So while Ricky's doing that, I think there's another celebration, Rachel. Aren't we? Have we got into the finals of another competition?
We have, yeah. And if the listeners went back to last week's Farmers Weekly, they'll see an article in there about Heather. And the competition was called the Alternative Enterprise Awards. And so we've made it to the finals, and it featured Heather and an article about the business and the day the judges came, really.
Have you any idea when the last sort of few entries will be judged?
I don't know. I think they're featuring a couple of the entries each week.
Right.
In the Farmers Weekly.
Okay. So it's part of their sort of their supplement of the magazine as well.
Yeah, it was.
It's quite an interesting magazine, Farmers Weekly, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I like the Farmers Weekly. I like they have a section in there called Farm Life. In that bit, there's lots and lots of interesting day-to-day stuff that farmers do. And farmers' wives too, and families in general. So I do like that part of it. The bit I don't like is all about the sale of the cattle and the sheep and the weights and the grades and all the rest of it. I find that utterly boring. But the rest of it, I really, really like.
Worth a read then.
Definitely, great magazine.
I wonder how many of our listeners have read Farmers Weekly magazine.
I don't know.
Not many, I don't suppose.
Not many, but it is interesting.
Perhaps they'd be inclined to now. And the other thing I was going to mention quickly, not to take advantage of Phil in his absence, of course, but recently I don't have the contact details of the people that contacted Phil, but there were a couple of our American listeners that were quite interested in Hedges because they wanted to try and join in the debate, our debate. And they'd asked about where they could get some suitable information so as they could get genned up on all things hedge-like. And I know Heather and Sandra talked about a book, or at least Heather talked about a book that Sandra was getting in here about the history of hedges, and that should be in the Wiggly stock in the next couple of weeks. But there is one book that's really, so far as Brits are concerned, is a bit like a Bible so far as the history of British countryside is concerned. But it also looks at the history of countryside right the way across the globe. And that's Oliver Rackham's book, simply called The History of the Countryside. And there's some really interesting bits and bobs in here. So far as America is concerned, Oliver talks about, he says here, and I quote, "In America I've seen thousands of miles of hedge in a dozen states from Vermont to Texas." And he also talks about the fact that there are hedges in the Austrian Alps, in the Peruvian Andes, Mount Helicon in Greece, all over the world really. One interesting thing that I found in this book is well worth reading. There was a particular extract, and I know that we've talked about this before. Phil's propensity to keep everything tidy, right? Now Oliver also states here, and I quote again, "Old overgrown hedges full of blossom in spring and set with hollow ivy tods and other reminders of antiquity are part of the romance of the English landscape. We remember them from our childhood and see them in the pictures of Constable and Arthur Rackham and the verses of John Clare. We see them still in places that have escaped the vandal hand of tidiness."
I bet you're glad
I really like that. I thought that was absolutely great. There's all sorts of goodies in here, and I have to say that if you read this, you really will get a feeling for the hedgerow argument, and of course, without wanting to sound arrogant or self-righteous in any way.
Absolutely.
Anything I've said prior to this time has been right and Phil's been completely wrong, and there is the evidence in this book to support my argument.
What was the name of that book again?
It's called The History of the Countryside, and it's by Oliver Rackham. If anybody wants any more details, by all means email me and I can send you the ISB number. Right, okay, now Ricky's come back in with the next treat. Okay, I've noticed you haven't brought yourself a cup of tea in.
No, I've had a little drink in the kitchen, thank you.
Oh, great stuff. So you're just giving us our poison.
Okay, so here we go.
So all this is basically is a bunch of dried nettle leaves with some boiling water poured over them.
An infusion. Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be very good for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And things that don't taste nice are good for you.
Certainly smells interesting.
Well,
I'll tell you what. It's not quite as bad as I was expecting.
No, I was thinking it to be a lot rougher than that. But it's actually...
It tastes just as good as some of those rancid fruit-flavoured tea bags you can buy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that it's definitely on a par with those, isn't it?
Well, I think we should try this for a month and see how our health improves.
Worth a second sip.
Right.
I had a lot of emails from people, but a couple of our listeners, Frankie and Nick Devereux, emailed me, and they suggested, Frankie suggested that I drink comfrey tea, but comfrey tea is really disgusting.
Oh,
You can't
is
even
it?
kind of lift it to your mouth because the smell is so bad. It makes you gag before it even gets to your mouth.
That's not a very pleasant smell, is it? I think the
No.
taste is nicer than the smell.
No, but do you know what I think's happened to it? I dried the leaves off in the oven, and I think they've picked up the smells that are already in the oven.
Yeah, you need to dry them naturally.
Yeah, you need to dry them naturally, and I think that it's picked up a fishy smell.
Yeah, I thought it smelled fishy actually.
Yeah.
So we've got fishy nettle tea.
Fishy nettle tea we have.
Noah will enjoy it, don't
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Would you like to
Yeah.
drink the tea, Noah?
Yeah, it's definitely got a smell of fishiness
I
about
thought
it,
that,
but the
yeah.
taste of it
It's not
is-
bad though. You know what?
is
I could
all right.
almost finish this.
And me.
I could almost finish this cup.
Yep, I could go for
Oh,
it
you'll
too.
feel much better tomorrow after
If
drinking
I
that.
thought this
All
was going
of-
to do me any good,
we'd take
Yeah.
you drink
I'd
it.
drink the whole
yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the next exercise is actually
To
to
try
get
it.
the nettles and hang them up and dry them out, and they'd probably take a few weeks, wouldn't they, to dry out properly?
Yeah,
Do you know what? I think we might have inadvertently stumbled across a new Wiggly product.
Ooh, dried nettles.
Dry
Well, there's
nettle
plenty
tea.
of them here.
Well, it's not bad. Ricky, I've got to congratulate you on your pasties
Well done,
and
Rick.
your nettle tea. Well, that's ace. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, it's lovely to see you, Rach.
Thank you, Rich.
I think that's pretty much us, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you should be proud of that podcast, wouldn't you?
We shall see.
We shall see.
If I get my P45
Yeah.
in 2 weeks' time, then
Absolutely.
we'll know that wasn't the
Well,
case.
I'm off for the next 2 weeks, so I'm okay. Do you want me to play piano a bit more, maybe?
Oh, that's a good idea. So it's a good idea. Anyway, listener, it's bye-bye from me, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
And bye-bye from me.
And bye-bye from me.
Well, I won't be here. I'll be on holiday.
Oh, you will,
I'll
won't you?
be up in the air
That's
somewhere.
a shame. I was going to
Yeah.
bring my grandchildren all dressed up to see you.
Were you?
Yes. I know
I'll be
how
out
you
and
love
about
them.
on my stick, Rick.
Yes, you will.
Rick, so
I wonder if they have Halloween in Australia. I don't know.
I'll let you know.
Well, I always think about Halloween. I won't go on about it too much now, but the waste, when they hollow out their pumpkins, people often just throw the pulp away. And it's such a shame because squash soup, pumpkin soup, is beautiful. It's really nice. My Sarah makes a really nice, spicy pumpkin soup. In fact, in my crippled condition, when I've been at home for the last few weeks, I've been eating pumpkin soup on a regular basis. So we've grown these massive, great squashes, and she's been cooking them up. So and also it's very good for you as well. So it tastes great, it tastes beautiful, but it's really good for you. But what I found strange was I said to Ricky, who's the ace cake maker, and she's definitely proven her worth with the pasties and the nettle soup today as well. Is that you have never done a squash soup, have you?
No, I haven't, no.
That was pumpkin soup, no. Do you hollow out pumpkins as well?
We
for
do
Halloween?
for the children, yeah. And
Oh.
throw it all away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done pumpkin pie.
Right.
But,
Nice.
I wasn't keen on it. It's very bland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
So you should have had lots of cinnamon and things to it.
Right.
But
Okay.
pumpkin soup we could try.
Well, you've got a recipe, Ricky, haven't you? So
I
I
have.
think for the benefit of the listener, you guys might quite like this recipe. And if you don't manage to jot this all down now, then just email us again, let us know, and then we can perhaps send the recipe over to you. But
So this works well with pumpkin.
any
well,
squash at all,
Any of that.
any
yeah.
squash, butternut squashes, pumpkins, any of those large, swollen, rich vegetables that we get at this time of year.
Right, so the ingredients for spicy squash soup are 1 onion chopped into thin rings, 2 cloves of garlic peeled and crushed, a 2.5 centimetre piece of ginger peeled and crushed, 1 chilli deseeded and finely chopped, a kilo of squash deseeded, peeled and roughly chopped, 2 tablespoons of sunflower oil, a teaspoon of ground cumin, a tin of tomatoes, 900 ml of veg stock, salt and black pepper, and 200 ml of coconut cream, which is optional. And the method is to heat the oil in a deep pan, add the onion, garlic, ginger and chilli. Fry gently for 5 minutes or until softened. Add the cumin and cook for 1 minute. Add pumpkin, tomatoes and stock. Bring to the boil and then reduce heat. Cover and simmer for 20 minutes until pumpkin is very tender. You transfer the mixture to a blender, blend until smooth, then return to the pan. Season, stir in coconut and gently heat. So it's quite simple, really.
It is dead simple
Yeah, sounds very nice.
and really tasty. So well worth trying, I think. I
Yeah.
would definitely recommend that.